I'm weeping. I mean, I am bawling, and I cannot remember ever having really cried before. But all of a sudden, I realized, oh my gosh, my dad bailed out, my mom was sick, but this guy is never going to leave me nor forsake me. So put that Bible verse in with that kid, even if it was angry like me, and I'd look at the verse and, oh, Mom, another Bible verse. Pray for him, help him realize that there's, but are we can you make it scar free? I don't think so.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Dr. Danny Huerta, Vice President of Parenting and Youth at Focus on the Family, and I'm inviting you into a difficult conversation, and that is the impact that divorce can have on children. And as you know, divorce is something that is happening at a very high rate, much too high. 10% would be too high. And it's at a 50% clip, and then 30% within Christian homes. Those are estimates, but we know the devastation is really felt from one generation to the next, and that can be grandparents or parents. And with me today, I have two wonderful guests to talk about this difficult topic, yet an important one to cover either with other trusted adults or just by yourself, or just knowing how to respond to kids when it comes to divorce. So Dr. John Trent, thank you for coming and talking to us about breaking this cycle of divorce. And that's the title of a book that you wrote on this topic. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Tim, clinical director of our counseling department here at Focus on the Family. The counseling department deals with this a lot. Thank you for being with us today as well.
Glad to be here, Danny.
All right. Well, let's talk about just the impact, the true impact that this can have, the ripple effect that it can have on children's lives. What have you guys seen with young kids? What kind of impact can divorce have, and do we see it immediately?
Well, again, my situation was, my dad left when we were 2 months old. So you're growing up with the absence of something, which is one set of challenges. You pick up, okay, this is maybe what happens on TV, or, this is what a man does, or this is what to do. It's that lack of having a model. But then there's other people that, they're 8 years old and life is, doing great for an 8-year-old. And then the mom and dad sit them down and say, guess what? And now all of a sudden they're a statistic in essence. And so there's that sense in which with younger kids in particular, they're both challenging is what I'm getting at. But it can be even harder sometimes when you've really lost something. For me, I didn't even meet him till I was almost in college, my dad, wow. Right at the end of high school. And so it's one thing to have an absence of a relationship, but I think it's even harder, Tim, when you've gone through it with a dad that and particularly that you love and care about.
And, what's interesting is with young kids that are 2 years old, 3 years old, they still pick up on the emotions that the parents are having. Mm-hmm. Those empathy neurons in the brain are firing, and they're feeling the emotional load, yet don't know what to say or articulate because they don't have the language to do so, yet they're absorbing all that. And I've heard parents say, they don't even know what's going on. They're just crying because we're loud. And it's really, they're picking up on the emotional load of what a divorce takes. And many times that takes a lot of conflict behind the scenes. It takes, in the same home, a separation already that's happening emotionally, and dynamics that create a lot of anxiety and uncertainty and the what ifs within kids. And their world begins to go upside down. Mm-hmm. So what happens to the preteen and the teenager when this hits home and they weren't expecting it?
Well, and I think sometimes we get caught up in the act of divorce, the actual moment that the husband and wife separate. But that led up, whether it's a few months, a few years, maybe a number of years, there's been tension going on. And that tension has already been impacting those children.
from a spiritual lens, we see that God hates divorce. That there's an opposition to that, and rightfully so, and he didn't design it that way. And it's messy. Some homes can be very messy. You have two people that don't know how to be in a marriage, and then you have children as spectators and as perceivers within that, absorbing all of what's happening between these two adults. And what I love here at Focus on the Family, we have Hope Restored for marriage that feel like they're completely out of control or hopeless. Know that you can find out more about that in our notes. Hope Restored is basically, it's a marriage intensive where you get 32 hours plus of counseling, and the counselors dive deep into where you guys are at to help break the cycle of this divorce. Now let's talk about adult children. How does this play out?
Let me jump into this real quick first. Safety is a critical issue here, and we can't let our children be in danger by staying.
Yeah.
Now, leaving doesn't mean for forever necessarily, but safety is a critical issue. And in the state of Colorado now, the child abuse laws have stated that domestic abuse, domestic violence, that tension between the two adults is considered child abuse now. Because we know and we've learned the negative impact that has on the children themselves. So safety is a paramount issue for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing against having a therapeutic separation and gaining that safety. There's nothing in Scripture that says don't do that.
Right.
And so, yes, the safety first, looking for a healthy place, a safe place for our kids is paramount for sure.
Yeah. Well, and boy, as we're talking about this, I think probably for a lot of us, either they're listening and they're saying, yeah, but we're right in the middle of this emotional meat grinder. And you mentioned the day of divorce, it doesn't end there, because then there's all the child custody issues. And we work right now, with some people that, oh my gosh, they've separated, and it hasn't brought it's every week you're dropping them off in a home where it's antithetical, and it's like to what you believe, what you've taught. Do you remember Ulysses's wife in Greek mythology? There was her husband went away to war and was gone for 7 years, and all these other guys said, he's dead, he's gone, you need to marry me. And so she goes, okay, I'll marry somebody just as soon as I finish this garment. So she would weave all day. Well, there were a bunch of suitors out there, but then she would unravel all night. And I'm telling you, I see that all the time with people, is they're trying to weave godly, and I love you and you're right here, and then they're in another situation and it's the opposite. So I guess the thing that we're talking about, boy, this sounds so discouraging, and we don't want to minimize the hurt in any way, and the emotion, okay? Because this is next to perhaps death of someone. It is the death of a relationship, and it is really tough. But at the same time, we want to make sure, and maybe that we can jump into that. What are some things we can do then for our kid, or even as they get older? Do we have any authority, for example, to say to them, if we've been divorced, well, you don't need to do that? And then we can maybe jump into some of that.
Well, let's talk first. What are some of the behaviors that may squeeze out? Yeah, I think we need to just kind of bring those out for parents to understand what behaviors may I expect in our kids when we're going through the divorce, and then when are they coping well? Let's talk about that, and then go into some practical tools for parents.
The first one that comes to mind, or actually the first two that come to my mind, one is anxiety.
Yeah.
Because everything is up in the air. Everything's what if. And, oh, by the way, things that people tell me aren't true because you guys promised and you broke your promise. You told us you'd always stay together. And so that anxiety is built up. And then the other piece is a lot of anger. Anger is a mix of anxiety and hurt. There's a lot of hurt with that child, and you throw all this anxiety on top, and of course they're going to get anxious. You're going to see the acting out. You're going to see the...
Acting out in which ways? What do you think, Tim?
It may be picking on my sibling. It may be being snappy at my mom. It may be trying to get one parent against the other one. There's just a lot of those kind of, it's not my normal behavior, and I'm acting out of, that's where you get the phrase acting out. I'm acting out of what's normal.
Yeah.
It's different.
Hey, and one thing just to throw out is that that kid that you think is really, well, they're actually the one that's kind of doing okay in all of this. But maybe they're really eating their feelings, and they're
The
really
silent
hurting.
sufferer.
Good point.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know, and I'm talking about my older brother in this case. You know, he did such a good job. He was mothering my mom, you know, without a husband and all, and she was going through all these really tough physical challenges. Well, but the problem was, you know, that really messes with childhood, you know, when you've got to become that parentified child or something. So the one that you think sometimes, oh, well, they're doing fine, I don't have to worry about them. That's the one that take them to breakfast, sit down with them, ask them a second time, not just the first time. So how are you doing? Fine. Well, no, talk to me. What is it that, you know, that's where are you at right now?
Well, there's some kids that may be exhibiting certain behaviors, like showing behaviors through substance use,
Yep.
right? Smoking cigarettes,
Yeah.
or maybe smoking weed or drinking.
Yeah.
And they may say everything's fine. It's no big deal, Mom, Dad.
Yeah.
And what you can say to that is, that's not what I see. I'm concerned about you. In your behaviors, you're showing me that you're trying to find something that's going to make you feel better about something.
Yeah.
And it seems that you're not feeling good about something, and you're numbing that out. And let's talk about that. Instead of these behaviors, these are just the results of what I'm seeing. What is truly going on inside of you? And I realize this is a real difficult thing for
It
you to
is,
try to
yeah.
handle.
And a lot of times, though, even if they're children, even teens, a lot of times may have that predisposition of somehow it's my fault.
Yeah,
Particularly as the
it's true.
younger the child is, it's my fault. They argued over me, or because I was born and mom didn't want, or dad didn't. Or it's somehow my fault. And whether they say it and whether they even acknowledge it and know it sometimes, that can still be one of the default thinking patterns in a child. And so they'll try to make up for it. And so sometimes you'll see the goody two-shoes kind of behaviors trying to be really, really, really nice. Because if I'm good enough, because it's all on my shoulders anyway, maybe my parents will get back together. And that
That
just
hope.
isn't theirs to carry.
So when do we see kids doing it well? How do we know that they're coping with it in a healthy way?
I don't know that they can. Maybe that's my own negative side of things. They'll get through it, so they'll survive. Yeah, that's for sure. But going through it well, unless there's a lot of outside assistance, whether it be grandparents or an aunt or uncle or a Sunday school teacher or a group of friends that come around them, they're going to come out with a lot of scratch and scrapes and wounds and bruises.
You know, Shakespeare has one of his characters in King Lear say, he laughs at scars who himself never bore a wound. I mean, if you grew up in a divorced home, you're going to have some scars. So I absolutely agree with that. But I do think something else you said was really important is, I remember I get kicked out of grade school. I think I mentioned that. I was in high school. I had to do a few laps. I didn't get kicked out. I just got slightly suspended several times. But I had so much anger. And then I walked into a Young Life club to give Young Life a plug. And here's this 6'4" ex-offensive tackle from Chico State who is now a Young Life leader. And I'm telling you, it was when I would go to Doug Barham's home and I would see his family. And he would show up at my games, not my dad. It was Doug. And probably without exaggeration, you mentioned, you know, some of the kids that have got some support systems. And it wasn't that my mom wasn't doing a good job. She was doing as good as she could. But boy, you know, that's who I would, you know, pray for. And I think that, I know for me just personally, I'll put it that way. It was somebody that just loved me to pieces. And then again, that relationship with Christ. You know what he had me do the night I came to know Christ? He tricked six of us, a bunch of us guys in the football team. He took us to a Billy Graham movie. And I'd never heard of Billy Graham. None of us in the six deal. And I didn't like the movie. Some lady got sick and died, and it was supposed to be sad, and I thought she deserved it. So I didn't like the movie. But I was a high school kid back then, you know. And but at the end, somebody gets up and they give an invitation. And the guy, all I remember is the guy going, "Do you want to change the pictures of your life story?" And 5 out of the 6 of us there walked down the aisle because we'd seen a 6'4" picture of Jesus, Doug Barham, our Young Life leader. But we walked down. But he gave each one of us a Bible. He had a Bible and a verse, and mine was Hebrews 13:5. For He Himself has said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." So Danny tells me to go home and read it 100 times. So I thought he was serious. He meant it metaphorically.
Okay.
But I get out a piece of paper. For He Himself has said, and I put a check mark, and then you do the tally sheet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the sideways thing. I get up to about 60 and I'm weeping. I mean, I am bawling, and I cannot remember ever having really cried before. But all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, my dad bailed out, my mom was sick, but this guy is never going to leave me nor forsake me. So put that Bible verse in with that kid, even if it was angry like me. And, I'd look at the verse and, "Oh, Mom, another Bible verse." Pray for him, help him realize that there's, but are we can you make it scar free? I don't think so.
No. And, my counseling practice, I've seen it a few times done in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I remember this one teen, pretty mature young man, and he saw through his parents' brokenness. He knew both of them brought brokenness into the mix, and he would talk in an honorable way, loving way about his dad, honorable way about his mom. He said they couldn't get along, and I'm sad that they weren't able to make this work. He went to the perceptual level. What he perceived was there rather than just that interpretation based on emotion.
Yeah.
It was devastating. He was sad. He cried. He grieved it. He went through a moment of anger, but he landed in a place of, all right, now I understand and I forgive them both. And it doesn't mean I have to do it. It was great to see that healthy process, but you're right. It wasn't fully healthy. He got to a healthy place.
Yeah.
And that was because there were people around him, mentors, pastors, counselor in his life that he was willing to listen to. So parents, one thing that would be really good to teach your kids along the way is the idea of just being able to be teachable and have different people speak into your life and speak life into a place that's broken and dark.
Yeah.
Because this is it's a devastation, a darkness that comes over a marriage, and it's broken apart. Satan divides things, but God brings life back into those things, and we need to realize that. And adults can do that surrounding our kids. Any other practical tools before we wrap up?
One thing that your thought spurred in my mind is, I don't know if we do it enough, but teach our teens particularly how to find healthy adults out there.
Yeah.
Not just, oh, he's my coach, so he's my coach, but how to find that, like you said, that young life leader. Ooh, he is a solid, smart person. He's, again, that how to pick those people and pull them adults around you. They're good at pulling teens and, peers around them, some healthy, some not so. But from an early age on, even start teaching them, here's how to pick out good adults to speak into your life.
And many times there's that feeling of embarrassment, feeling of shame.
Yes.
Feeling of, there are big feelings of sadness, especially for boys where they're not wanting to look weak. They don't want to cry with their friends. Just help your kids understand that those are normal responses to something so devastating as this within a home. Yeah. And so how do we help our adult kids break free from this cycle? What can we tell? What can we say to adult kids that have had the parents that divorced, and how's that passed into or passed down to the grandchildren?
Well, one thought that just helps me like crazy is it is so easy to think what I'm experiencing today is always going to be what I'm feeling, or they're always going to hate me Because right now I left their dad, let's say, and I'm, so I took you away from, and there's so often where, you hate to say it, but over time, we know this one young lady that was so angry and so hurt, divorce situation, and so mad at the mom. That was kind of the whole situation. But the mom was taking her out of what was to the younger kid, that to her, physically abusive, and she needed to go. It was just, but boy, she just hated her mom and hated her mom. Well, she's 30 now, and on her 30th birthday, she wrote a book, not a real book, but like anybody can make a book now online. Do you know what I'm saying? But it was called "Mom, You Were Right." Mm-hmm. Now, and it was just, you were right about boys, because she acted out in that. She was right. You were right about drugs. You were right about this. You were right about that. And it was such a, but that was a long journey. And I think we just want it to change right now. And right. It's a tough thing to try to say, but you never give up. You never mm-hmm. give up praying and hoping for them.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think that really the impact of divorce is clearly big mm-hmm. in kids' lives and all throughout their development. And if for some reason you as a parent are in the middle of a divorce or have divorced, this isn't to cause you shame in any way. It's really to equip you, and just know that there is a word called co-parenting now. And part of it is really in that thought is that two parents decide that they want to put their disagreements aside and agree to bring as much health to the kids in a place that has been unhealthy and broken. And maybe you as a parent, if you're in that situation, can begin to bring that momentum of life into a place where that's been taken away, and see if there's some counseling for you and your ex-spouse to talk through ways to cut off this cycle of divorce. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Things happen there. Jesus died on the cross. There's forgiveness for many things in our lives, and there's so many complexities to marriage. It's a difficult thing. And what we want to encourage you, if you're still in a marriage and you're struggling, seek the help you need, because it is a devastating decision in your kid's life. If you're able to bring health back into the marriage, do so, because it can affect not only this generation of kids, but the next one. And realize that statistically, it will be much more helpful to your kids if you decide to go get the help, and then also the patience to hang in there along the way, because relationships are messy. That's just the reality of how life is within a family. Thank you both, Dr. John and Tim, for talking through this topic. We could probably talk for another 30, 40 minutes
for sure.
on this. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we address these topics, we do have videos available for you on our YouTube channel. We have a parenting page, focusonthefamily.com/parenting, and much, much more. And also Dr. John Trent's book, Breaking the Cycle of Divorce. You can find that in the online store. Visit store.focusonthefamily.com. We'll have the links to all these resources at the end of this video. And so if you have any needs as well, I want to reiterate our counseling line. It's a free call, 1-800, the letter A, and family. And you can talk with a counselor for free about your specific situation. May God guide you and strengthen you along the way. Good to be with you.